Hey everybody, before we begin today's episode, I just want to say a quick message. First of all, a massive thank you to each and every one of you listening to the That Chapter podcast. We just hit 100,000 subscribers on YouTube and on Spotify, it's absolutely incredible. Really means a lot to me, to Keith, and to the Warthog. Can't, thank you enough for listening. We truly enjoy making this podcast. It's always so much fun, so we hope you enjoy listening to it too. And there's also going to be more visual stuff coming on the YouTube side, so please keep an eye out for that. And a second is another huge thank you. They didn't want any credit, but Leslie, thank you so much for the brand new podcast art and logo. We absolutely love it. I'm sure you folks listening probably noticed that in your feed, and it's perfect to celebrate this milestone. So thank you so much to everybody listening. Oh, and one final thing. There is now a dedicated That Chapter podcast Instagram. It'll be in the description, or just go to Instagram and search for That Chapter podcast. It's ran by both me and Keith. So if something stupid is posted, it was probably posted by me. If it's probably insightful and related to the actual topic, it's probably Keith. All right, now let's get into today's story. It's funny, it's weird, and it's very, very creepy. All right, thanks, folks. All right, hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and you're listening to the That Chapter podcast. Do you want to say hello or anything, or just sit there blankly staring at me?
I'll just stare.
Okay, great. Well, hey, listen, we're off to a good start so far. This is it's like cocaine in the ears. This podcast is off to such a good start. We're so excited over here.
I hope this isn't your first one.
All right, folks. Today, it's time for a paranormal spooky episode. This is actually a very exciting episode.
It's great. It's so good.
Yeah, this is such a good story. We do our serial killers and our murders and our yada yada yada. Today we got a good old Spookahontas, I like to call it. So I'm very excited to get into the story of the Highgate vampire. Last year it was witches. We finally just about, I think, got Keith to shut up about Salem for maybe 5 minutes, and now we're getting him to talk about vampires before he wants to talk about more about witches. But let's just enjoy it while it lasts, folks. 2023 was the year of the witch. 24 year of the vampire.
The vampire. I'm on the vampire buzz now.
Oh, you know what we should do next is mummies. I've always wanted to cover all
the curses and stuff.
The curses and Howard something, the guy, the Thing. What's a good movie? The Mummy. That's a good movie.
That is a great movie. And that stands up.
Let's talk about Brendan Fraser in the movie, because that holds up very, very well.
I really like the first one. The second one...
No, the second one's not good, because there's that really annoying kid in it.
Yeah, I could do without him. Yeah. But the first one was unbelievable.
The first one is a brilliant movie. Yeah. It just holds... It's what I would class it in that perfect movie thing. Not like it's a perfect movie, or it's a 10 out of 10. It's just it has everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's well written, it's well acted, you're never bored, the movie moves along at a good pace.
It's on high on my list of rewatchable movies.
Yeah.
If it's on, I'm gonna watch it.
Exactly. I'll always stick it on. Or if I'm bored and I have nothing else to watch and I'm looking through Netflix or whatever, and sure, I'll stick it on. It makes for perfect background TV. Actually, and speaking of movies, folks, once again, it is the second or third time of Mike's regularly scheduled Mike's Movie Hour, which will probably last about 5 minutes. But Keith, I've watched more horror movies since we last talked of horror movies.
Excellent. Okay.
Previously, I watched Longlegs, Trap. We talked about some movies about exorcists and all that kind of stuff. Honestly, my favorite type of horror movie, found footage movie, that kind of stuff. Least favorite, religious horror movies. Not a fan of The Exorcist or any of that kind of stuff. The Conjuring doesn't do it for me.
I like Texas. It was kind of I think it's one of those things. It's just it's classic. It's nice to watch. I think if it came out today, but but because it's it kicked off so much and what the genre is, it's a foundation. I was it's a great movie. But I get where you're coming from. If it was out today, but it's alright.
Actually, this isn't on my list, but it's a movie I did watch recently enough, and I started to watch it. Was Poltergeist. The original 1980.
Is that the one where she ends up in the pool with loads of dead bodies? And they're actually real?
Yes, that is the thing. The dead bodies were real, because it was cheaper to get real buried dead bodies than it was to make prosthetic ones or fake ones, which is quite fascinating. Hasn't aged well. No, I kind of had to stop watching. I was like, oh boy.
No, okay.
There's one or two moments that do give you a jump, but it's just bad CGI.
Yeah, well, I suppose when you're watching these as a kid, it's whoa.
Yeah. Because I remember it scaring the shit out of me, the clown and shit like that. Anyway, I have my list on my phone. Okay, I'm documenting these thoroughly on my notes app. Okay, so recently, what did I watch? Okay, one was a movie called, I think it was called either Hosted or Host. It was on Shudder.
Okay, right.
Low budget movie. It's about an hour long. So the whole movie takes place over Zoom.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool.
Very similar to a movie that came out maybe 10-ish years ago called Unfriended,
right.
which was all done over Skype. So this is updating with the times where people use Zoom now. I still use Skype, by the way, but people use Zoom now, apparently. It was done during COVID lockdowns.
Yeah.
And it's like, boy, oh boy, nothing ages worse than a movie set during COVID. It's like, holy fuck. Yeah. But anyway, so the plot of the movie is these group of gals, they go to do a seance over Zoom.
Nice, okay.
They meet with this other woman. She usually does them in person, but because of COVID, she's doing it over Zoom. And, it's like, oh, you bring a candle and an item of somebody who has passed, who is dear to you. And we'll see if we can get the top. You know the drill. Yeah. And you also know what happens after that. Things go wrong real bad. So I would say it was about an hour long, the movie. Not great, but it did have some moments in it that were... It was kind of like one of those movies I expected it to be absolute dog shit, and it was just like a bit better than dog shit.
Okay, right, okay. Watchable.
It was like surprisingly watchable. It was better than I was expecting it to be. So I would give it like maybe a 5 or 6 out of 10.
Okay.
The next movie is a movie I've actually seen before, The Empty Man.
Oh, I've seen that.
That's an excellent movie.
That is really good and really weird.
We might have watched it.
I think we watched it together. We might have been drinking heavily. So
we did usually drink heavily. For the folks at home, me and Keith used to do horror movie nights. Now the podcast is, I guess, our horror movie nights. Yeah. But yes, Empty Man. Excellent movie. That would be, I would rate that I would give that 2 thumbs up. Highly recommend anybody who, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. Don't spoil it. Just go in, not having a clue what it's about. I feel like the thing about The Empty Man that it suffers from is it's a really shitty title for a movie.
Yeah,
The Empty Man. It sounds like a crappy urban legend movie, monster movie.
Yeah,
it's not at all. It's not a monster.
It was like the Invisible Man. I thought it was something like that.
Yeah, or like the Slicer Man. You know, when he's kind of shitty, you say his name 3 times and he doesn't get it. And what I love about The Empty Man is it's like 5 different movies in one. It starts off like as these people who are lost in the Himalayas or something, and scary stuff happens, and then it moves to like this town in Missouri, and these teenagers like go missing, and then it's like then it becomes kind of like a teen slasher. Then it's a detective trying to find teens, and then it eventually becomes like this weird Lovecraftian cult.
It's very good.
It's very cool in how they do it.
It stays with you as well.
Super interesting movie. One of the better horror movies I've probably in my ever seen. I think it's really, really interesting movie. I would highly recommend anybody go in it not knowing anything. Another movie I watched, again, which I'd seen before, is Grave Encounters 2.
Oh, okay.
We are both big fans of the first one.
I love the first one.
The first one's very funny.
Wow, what a great story.
It's such a good thing. It's such a great like piss take of Jack Baggins, all these like ghost hunters or whatever. Grave Encounters 2, I may or may not have watched it before. It's pretty forgettable. In fact, I'm not even sure I watched it for a second time.
They're not the same characters, are they?
Honestly, the whole movie is forgettable.
Okay, right.
I'm not even sure if I just rewatched it. I might have just written down the name here on my little document. So that's a skipperoonie. Another movie I watched was Lake Mungo.
Okay, haven't heard that.
I thought this was really good, really interesting. So it's an Australian, it's very low budget, like independent horror movie. It was on Amazon, I think. So basically it's done like a documentary.
Okay.
So this family in Australia, their daughter drowns in a lake, and then they start experiencing paranormal stuff after. And the movie is set like it's interviewing them of like what they witnessed after.
Okay, yeah.
It's all like done like that. Again, it's a movie with a lot of twists, as in you think you know the answer, but you don't.
Right.
Some genuine, really scary moments in it.
Yeah.
I thought it was really good.
Okay.
A lot of twists in it, but done very well in that kind of it's done like very straight.
Yeah.
You know, like just a regular kind of documentary. I guess it's a mockumentary or whatever. I would give that a good, quite a good review. That's a solid thumbs up from Mike.
Nice,
Lake Mungo, because the name sounds weird.
Yeah.
It's not like a monster. Like I thought Lake Mungo, I thought it was like a crocodile killing people. Yeah. Like it's like, no, it's not like that at all. It's not a monster movie. It's a ghost movie.
When you said it, I was like, the hell's that? And you're like, it's straight. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Lake Mungo,
mate. And then the final one I have here in today's Mike movie review is Alien Romulus, the latest Alien movie.
Yeah.
Alien franchise, first Alien is pretty good. Aliens, all-time classic. That's the goat of a movie.
Yeah.
After that, Alien 3... That's it. That's my fart noise. Alien Resurrection has some moments, but overall it's bad. And then you got like really dog shit movies like AVP 1 and 2. So the Alien franchise is like got honestly, it's for such a big franchise, it's got like 2 good movies in it.
Yeah.
Alien Romulus is the 3rd good movie in the franchise.
Good, okay.
I thought it was excellent.
Right.
I really, really enjoyed it. I was glued to the screen from start to finish. Because like I said, there hasn't really been any good Alien movies since Aliens, which came out in like 80 whatever.
Yeah.
So it was great. I thought the characters in it were great. Really tense, scary moments in it. The franchise is resurrected like a chest burster out of a young woman's chest. Or whatever, you know what I mean? I was glued to the screen like a facehugger was on me.
Nice.
I thought it was excellent. So if I think it's still in the theaters, but if it's not, or when it's not, if you're a fan of alien sci-fi stuff, I would highly recommend Alien Romulus. And that's the end of today's Mike movie review. The next movie I haven't seen yet, but I know what it's going to be. It's a movie called Oddity, which I'm probably going to watch either after we record this or perhaps tomorrow.
Do you know what you should check out as well? The Night House.
I've seen that.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, because you wouldn't shut the fuck up about it.
I think it's a really good movie.
Yeah.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I think I remember it being pretty decent.
That was good.
No, I'm going to go watch Oddity. Now it's done by the same guy who did a movie you and I watched together, Keith, called Caveat. Do you remember? It's about this guy who goes to an island.
Yes, yeah, that was really good. And he was like, he had to house it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was weird.
Change.
Yeah. Yes,
the thing.
Yeah,
so
weird,
it's. I remember. I think you liked Caveat a lot more than I did. I don't think I was that hot in it, but this is. I think
I had more to drink.
Yeah, you're probably drunk than me. But Oddity is done by the same guy. Apparently, it's very good.
Nice.
It's an
cool.
Irish horror movie, so I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Excellent. Cool.
So that's this episode is of Mike. I need our own theme song. Do.
The countdown?
Yes. That'll
do. Well, let's change it slightly.
Yeah.
Did it.
Yeah, there you go. They can't copyright me for that. My own original. All right. So, Keith, that's my intro to today's podcast. What about you? So, Mike does movies. Keith does haunted houses. What have you got for me today? Anything happen?
I do have something weird happen. Ooh. So, I don't know if this is ghost related. It's definitely something weird that happened in the house, though. Okay. And I can't explain it. Okay, so I'll tell you, and you can let me know. It could be ghost activity. I don't know.
Okay, but so this has happened multiple times, or just once?
Just once. Just really, really weird. So it was just myself and my wife that were in the house, and we were there all morning. And then around like the afternoon, my wife, she came out of the bathroom. She's like, "Did you cut yourself?" I was like, "No."
Cut yourself?
Yeah, I was like, "No, I'm fine." And she's like, okay. It's like there's a fingerprint of blood on the wall.
What?
In our bathroom.
Okay.
And then I was like, oh, maybe it's like old or whatever. And she was like, no, I wiped it up and it was wet. It was like fresh.
Oh.
And I was like, we were the only ones in the house the whole day. We were like, I was looking, I was like, maybe I did cut myself. I didn't really realize. Yeah. But like, no, nothing. She was the same, nothing. Very, very weird. And it was just, I took a photo.
Okay.
So this is the photo.
Okay, well, it wouldn't have been your daughter.
She wasn't in the house.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she was in creche for the day, and we were like both work from home. But yeah, so this is...
Whoa. This seems like an escalation of horror shit.
It's weird.
I mean...
I don't know if this has gone beyond ghosts. This is going to get real now.
Well, see, the thing is, what did we say? It's like the ghost activity seems to be picking up in autumn and winter and the darker months. Yeah. You know, you said summer was quiet.
Yep.
Can I see?
Yeah. Here you go. So here's a photo.
Oh, that is very red, and that is blood.
Yeah, and there was like a drop down, and like I did initially thought I was like, okay, maybe it was.
Wait, so that's the floor. It's tile.
Yeah,
I actually don't think I'll be able to put it in the video because it's blood. YouTube sucks, by the way. For the people at home who know that YouTube blocks and will delete your video if there's even a hint of blood in it or anything.
But yeah, so there's like this sort of fingerprint thing in the wall, and then it was like there's a drop on the ground.
Yeah,
and I thought initially I was like, oh, maybe there's like a mouse or something like that.
That's literally what I was going to say.
I searched like if it was a mouse with that amount of blood came out, there would have been drops of blood somewhere else. I spent ages on the floor looking around for something else, and especially in our bathroom where there's no little crevices or holes or anything. And I know mice can get in like really, really small things, but there's nowhere for it to go. And my office is right across from the bathroom as well, and like I didn't see anything.
So for the folks at home, it's your skirting in your bathroom. That's the white, white skirting. You know, and there's kind of like a thumbprint with blood on it, and the blood's like kind of sort of dripping down, but then below that, like on the ground, is a droplet of blood, like a circular droplet of dark blood.
And that was fresh when it was wiped up. Like it was wet.
Your wife took this picture before she wiped it?
Just before she wiped it, she wiped it. Yeah, or she took a photo and wiped it.
Freaky. It must have been an animal or something. That's the only thing I could think of.
That's exactly that's what I was thinking. It's like it had to be an animal, but like and I searched everywhere because I was like, oh no, mice. And then but I literally looked everywhere. There was like that's a good chunk of blood. It's like there must have been trails of blood, drops of blood somewhere else.
Yeah.
I looked everywhere. I was on my hands and knees, like kind of wiping the floors. I was like, where is it? I couldn't find it anywhere else.
I would put a mousetrap in the room just
yeah, okay.
So you know, or you can just pretend it's a ghost.
We'll just say it's a ghost. Yeah.
Okay, it's a ghost.
Very
Keep getting a ghost.
I got a ghost cut himself. Oh no! Just in there, about to be shaven. Oh shit! Nicked myself.
All right, folks. So today, now it is time. We got movies, we got bloody ghosts, and today we got. Oh, actually, right now, this as a little segue. Yes, we got a bloody old ghost, mate, in London.
We do
bloody old ghosts. In today's episode, we are diving into the world of bloodsuckers, and no, I don't mean the tax man. Today, we're talking about the bloodiest of the blood, the vampire.
The vampire. Honestly, I'm very excited to cover this today. Like, some of my all-time favorite movies are vampire movies. You listed a couple movies, I'll list a couple movies. I won't give a review, but just a quick list.
Sure.
30 Days a Night, love that, that's great. Let the Right One In, seen that?
Yes,
that was really good. Actually, I seen the play as well. The play was good.
Yeah.
From Dusk Till Dawn, Bram Stoker's Dracula, classic. Dracula, Dead and Loving It.
You love that movie.
Which one?
Dracula, Dead and Loving It.
Oh, it's great. It's like, why wouldn't it? Like, it's brilliant.
What are some other good ones? Interview with a Vampire.
Of course,
it's a classic.
That is good. Yeah.
Blade. Does that count?
It does count. I'm going to count it.
All right. Yeah.
I like it.
Damn, I'm kind of blanking on other vampire movies.
Well, I'm pretty sure I listed the best ones.
Yeah, well, listen, if we didn't talk about it, it doesn't matter.
And, if I'm wrong, run to the comments. Let me know.
Exactly. Let us know in your comments. We will be sure to read them.
But today's story it's no different, and it feels like something's taken straight out of a movie as well.
Absolutely. It truly, really does. This is a wacky, weird, pretty creepy story too. The story of the Highgate vampire. It's one of London, England's most famous and bizarre urban legends. But it's almost like a real urban legend. This shit gets pretty real in this one. It's steeped in supernatural lore and mystery. So this all centers around Highgate Cemetery, a large and atmospheric Victorian cemetery in North London, known for its Gothic architecture, winding paths, and towering tombstones. It's a really interesting ceremony. I've never been there, but it's super cool. It's super like overgrown, wild. Yeah. It reminds you of like the cemetery in Interview with a Vampire, which I just mentioned at the start. It's like very creepy. It's almost like the forest has like overtaken parts of it, which just makes it even more creepier and spookier.
And it's gorgeous looking. It's
very Gothic, cool, Victorian. It really looks like Jack the Ripper.
It does,
around there, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like I got on Google Maps and I kind of walked around a little bit. But there's tours you can do within it as well. If I go to London, definitely going to go there.
Yeah, well,
it looks amazing.
You did Google Maps, so you walked around. You've practically
already
been there.
Yeah, I'd have to go.
This tale emerged in the late 1960s and early 1970s, captivating the public's imagination and leading to a media frenzy.
This is one of the best parts about it as well, because initially when I seen the Highgate vampire, I was like, oh great, this must be something from like the 1800s or something like that. No, it's the 70s. It's great.
Maybe there's people listening to this now who remember when this happened. The legend began in 1969 when strange occurrences were reported around Highgate Cemetery. Locals claimed they'd seen a tall, dark figure. Some described it as a man, others as a spectral presence, roaming the graveyard at night. Eyewitnesses often described the figure as having hypnotic red eyes and an ominous supernatural aura. These sightings increased, with some claiming the figure could vanish and reappear at will, move through locked gates, and drain the life force from its victims. Around this time, reports of dead animals, drained of blood, were found near the cemetery. There were also stories of people feeling an overwhelming sense of dread or being frozen with terror when encountering the mysterious figure. However, the real crux of this story is not the vampire itself. Instead, it centers around two rival vampire hunters, who each set out to rid the cemetery of its Nosferatu problem. One was a guy named David Farrant, a local paranormal investigator, Wiccan occultist, and head of the British Psychic and Occult Society, BPOS. The other rival vampire hunter was Sean Manchester, a self-proclaimed vampire hunter, exorcist, and president of the British Occult Society. And we need to be very, very clear, these are two different societies that hated each other but were about the same thing. You have the British Psychic and Occult Society, and their rival, the British Occult Society.
Yeah.
We dropped the psychic.
Yeah, they were doing the same thing though.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
These guys hated each other.
Yeah.
And they had this decades-long feud, both publicly and privately, like right up until Farrant's death in 2019. You can still actually see a number of these arguments that these guys had on a number of different internet forums. And we'll dive a bit deeper into their feud in a bit, but here's the basic gist of why these guys just didn't really see eye to eye. So David Farrant, he believed that the figure was a supernatural entity, possibly a vampire, and called for a proper psychic investigation. He wanted to study it. He wanted to learn from it. Then we've Sean Manchester, on the other hand, and he took a way more dramatic approach to this. He claimed that the figure wasn't just a ghost, it was a literal vampire that needed to be destroyed using traditional methods. Manchester, he had a real flair for the theatrics. He even dressed up as a bishop. Like, it's worth noting, he wasn't a Roman Catholic bishop. He was a bishop of the old Catholic Church, which isn't quite the same thing.
Yeah. So I've actually watched a couple of interviews with both David Farrant and Sean Manchester. You can find lots of interviews with them online. So you got Sean Manchester, who did dress up like so the old Catholic Church and the Roman Catholic Church are not the same thing.
No, they're different.
They like split along like a couple hundred years ago.
Yeah.
So very, very different. But he dresses up just like a Catholic bishop, like you can imagine, and he has this weird curly hair. He looks like a crazy person. He just dresses like a priest.
Like massive sideburns as well.
Yeah, and then you have David Farrant, who dresses like a vampire. Actually.
Yeah.
He dresses like in this, like he cosplayed. He went to Spirit of Halloween and got like the Lestat costume. Like he looks weird, like a clown. I'm a Sean Manchester guy though.
Yeah.
His interviews are hilarious.
I knew you would be, man. I knew you would be. He does make this story far more interesting.
Oh yeah, he's great. Yeah. 10 out of 10. I'm a Sean guy. Luckily for us, both David Farrant and Sean Manchester wrote books about their experiences with the Highgate vampire, which we're using as sources for this whole episode. However, it is worth noting that these accounts should be taken with a healthy, and when we say healthy dose, we mean like a full-on shot glass of skepticism, especially Sean Manchester's, because as Keith so eloquently put it, he has a definite flair for the theatrics.
Yes, his version is way more cinematic.
So you got David, who's kind of like, there's could be something spectral, occult here. Let's watch it and study it. And Sean is the guy kicking down the door with the
fucking kill it!
Let's get it! Come fucking kill us all if we don't get it today! You know, it's very, very funny. So let's give it a go. Alright, so before we dive into the where, let's explore the when, as the culture of the time is crucial to understanding this story. So when you think of Britain in the 60s and the 70s, you might envision mod and rocker subcultures and that kind of thing. The British invasion with bands like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, all the
blisters on my fingers,
rising to international fame, all the wars of punk rock with the Sex Pistols and the Clash, along with the glam rock era featuring David Bowie. However, a more unconventional movement was also making waves underground, Keith. That was, dare I say, witchcraft. This trend began to gain traction in 1951 when the British government lifted a long-standing ban on practicing witchcraft. You know, what's interesting about 1951, what happened 6 years earlier? Charles Walton murdered by a witch.
I was actually thinking that. Yeah.
1945. The witchcraft murder of Charles Walton occurred also in England. By the way, I have noticed that 90% of our occult episodes are set in England. England, okay, we're saying it here. This is the official That Chapter stands. England is the most haunted country in the world.
Yeah.
They've got witches. We just did the ghost of the Black Monk of Pontefract.
Oh, yeah. Now they have vampires.
Yeah. They got witches, they got vampires. If you're an English listener, get out now. Get out while you can. So the movement gained further momentum with the rise of witch-sploitation, documentaries that dominated British media, exploring the rituals and practices of witchcraft, which fueled the public's curiosity and sense of mystery. Simultaneously, horror films with occult themes were becoming increasingly popular around this time.
I guess it's kind of worth noting that filmmakers, they often took a lot of liberties with the occult imagery and concepts, like to make their movies more engaging. So they took the most controversial and intriguing aspects of practices like Wicca and Satanism and voodoo and paganism and witchcraft, and they basically just mixed them all together for entertainment in a big boiling pot.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this creative approach, it contributed to a shift in public perception. Like, it really casted practices like Wicca as sinister and evil. So once you hear someone was like, oh, I'm practicing Wicca, you didn't have a lot of knowledge. Your knowledge came from the movies. I was like, oh my God, he's a Satanist. Like, no, that's not what it is.
Yeah, for sure. I think that still continues to this day. Widely when you think of it. And additionally, the music scene was abuzz with bands like Black Sabbath and Donovan, who his most famous song is Summer of the Witch, Season of the Witch?
Season of the Witch, yeah.
Which incorporated the themes of witchcraft and occult into their lyrics. So basically, occult, witchcraft, Satanism, all that kind of spooky shit was in vogue.
It was happening.
Around this time. Hey, listen, you gotta get in on that trend, you gotta get in there early. Now, that's the sense of the when, right? People were becoming more and more familiar with ghosts and goblins and stuff like that in movies and music. And then, guess what? One frickin' pops up in your local graveyard. So, Highgate Cemetery, it's a Gothic cemetery. It's located in North London next to Waterloo Park in the London Borough of Camden. If you've ever been to Camden, you keep going north, you will come to it. It's sort of, though, like on the edge of the city. You're getting to, it's a very suburban area, like it's a good bit from downtown London.
Yeah.
And it's divided into two sections. You have the East Cemetery and the West Cemetery on either side of a place called, like a road called Swains Lane. Established in 1839, Highgate contains approximately 170,000 individuals buried in 53,000 graves spread across 15 hectares or 37 acres. It's quite large. And the thing is as well, like when you're looking at it, it's large, but it's not like, when you see a lot of cemeteries that are large, they're open. Highgate is not open at all. You could very easily get lost. It's extremely overgrown. It's extremely, like, the trees and the bush are extremely thick. It's very twisting and winding. You could easy to get lost in a place like this. The West Cemetery is particularly famous for its Gothic architecture, winding pathways, and overgrown vine-covered tombstones. I believe the West Cemetery is like the private cemetery, whereas the East is more open to the public, and that's where a lot of notable figures are buried, including Karl Marx, the father of communism, George Eliot, which was the pen name of Mary Ann Evans, a famous novelist. I did a search of her. Couldn't tell. It did not ring a bell with me at all. I was not familiar with any of her works. But hey, listen, maybe she's famous to you. And Douglas Adams, who wrote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and I'm sure there's much more other famous people there too. The graves there in the East are more modern, but the area does retain an eerie historical feel with a combination of older Victorian headstones and then also alongside newer memorials.
You can actually still be buried in Highgate.
Sweet.
But you have to apply, you need to be either over the age of 80 or you need to be terminally ill.
Okay, yeah, damn. Not yet.
I think
Fingers open, fingers crossed.
Yeah. I think I already told you before what I want when I die. I have like 2 requests. One is I want my remains to be scattered amongst the pub.
Oh, yes.
And then the second one is I do not want to be cremated. Seeing a joke in line, take it on my own.
That's good. Hey, it's a Keith classic now.
So, interestingly, along with many other sources, there is a legend from Highgate Cemetery that may have inspired Bram Stoker when he was writing Dracula.
So it already had a history of the vampire.
It did.
Before we even get to our story.
It did, big time. So Bram Stoker, he was born on November 8th, 1847 in Clontarf, Dublin, Ireland, which actually isn't too far from me. I pass his house.
You can say Bram Stoker is one of your boys.
Yeah, he's one of my boys, yeah.
Yeah.
There's actually a really nice cafe around the corner called Bram's. It's lovely.
Nice.
But anyway, after his marriage, he moved to London, and the following story takes place around the time of his relocation. So Elizabeth Siddell, or Lizzie, she was born in 1829, and she was an English artist and art model, and she was also a poet. And she was also the wife and muse of Dante Gabriel Rossetti, a prominent English poet and artist. So after Lizzie's death in 1862, she was buried in Highgate Cemetery, and Dante, he buried a collection of his unpublished poems with her. A gesture was deeply romantic.
Yeah.
It was like, oh. However, 7 years later, Dante decided that he wanted his poems back. Just some good shit in there.
Shit, I forgot what I read down. I need them.
Dig her up.
Actually, 7 years, he won't mind. He's got a new wife now. He's right, love poems.
So he had Lizzie's body exhumed in 1869 to retrieve them for publication. So the myth surrounding this exhumation claims that Charles Augustus Howell, the man tasked with overseeing the process, he discovered that Lizzie's body had not decayed over 7 years.
Yeah.
Her vivid red hair had allegedly continued to grow after her death, filling the coffin and enveloping her with these fiery locks. So she was also said to have looked as beautiful as ever.
Oh.
Now, it is worth noting that Charles Augustus Howell, he was a notorious liar, blackmailer, and also a fraud. He was a bit of a bastard man.
Yeah.
In fact, he actually inspired the Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes story, The Adventure of Charles Augustus Milverton.
Wow. So, he's a real piece of shit, so we should take him at his word.
Absolutely.
When he says, wow, she was a babe.
Completely believe this. But while this tale of Lizzie's body remaining untouched by decay is likely a fabrication, Bram Stoker may have heard this legend after moving to London, especially given his potential connections to the Rossetti's literary circle. So it's possible that this eerie atmosphere of Highgate Cemetery, combined with the stories like Lizzie, influenced maybe in part of his writing of Dracula. We'll never know for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely say that, though. I mean, like I said, just taking one look. Like, for the folks at home who are maybe not familiar with Highgate Cemetery, just put it into Google. It looks creepy. It looks like a place of gothic horror. As I said at the time, it looks like a place you can imagine Jack the Ripper or something like that.
Yeah.
Vampires, Dracula, all that kind of shit hanging around there. It's really cool looking. It is an awesome looking cemetery. And it is true that Highgate Cemetery was once an inspiring place for Victorian England. But by the 1930s, it had started to fall into neglect. By the late 1960s, this once grand Gothic cemetery was completely overgrown, dilapidated, and had pretty much turned to shit. But I kind of feel like it makes it cooler.
Yeah,
the fact that it's overgrown and kind of left to ruin.
It
makes
adds to it.
It adds to its atmosphere. It makes it a lot more spooky. Like, you can see pictures. It looks like just a field and a forest, but just gravestones.
Yeah.
The trees, and it just looks crazy. It looks
Hey,
cool.
look, people are still dying to get in there.
Hey. Very nice. And to make matters worse, there were reports of Satanists. Oh, these again. I hate these guys. Running amok, causing all sorts of mischief. Generally due to the occult obsession at the time, groups of teenagers were posing as Satanists, running around, destroying graves, and breaking into mausoleums, which therefore sparked rumors about the cemetery being home to occult invocations of demons, the dead, and maybe, dare I say, Satan himself. And so, this is the setting. Now, enter the two buttes, David Farrant and Sean Manchester. So let's begin the story of the Highgate vampire with the account of one David Farrant, the president of the British Psychic and Occult Society. So David was introduced to alternative ideas about the unexplained from a young age, thanks largely to his mother, who strongly influenced his early interest in Wiccan and the paranormal. By his late teens and early 20s, he was fully immersed in exploring esoteric practices, ancient rites, and Wicca. After reaching third degree initiation and forming his own coven, he started experimenting with high-level magic, blending these rituals into what some might call risky forms of psychic research. And it was during this time, in 1967, that he founded the British Psychic and Occult Society and then installed himself as its president. In 1969, London, reports flooded the BPOS about a tall, dark figure haunting the tombs of Highgate Cemetery. Witnesses claimed to have encountered the eerie apparition, which terrified both visitors and passers alike, and so they looked upon the original Ghostbusters for salvation.
I wonder how many reports they actually got. Like, they said they were flooded, but how many did you get?
There's like 2 reports. Oh my god,
I can't keep up.
We're overwhelmed. Unfortunately, after looking into many of these reports, they turned out to be third-party accounts, gossip, pub rumors. That is, until they came across a man who claimed to have a first-hand account with this phenomenon, or the Highgate vampire. An accountant using the alias Thornton claimed to have been hypnotized by something in the cemetery after he had gone there late one afternoon to look around, he says. What were you doing there?
What were you doing?
Looking around. You know yourself, just having a look.
I'm not taking questions, okay?
I'm telling the story. The man said he got lost, but not being superstitious or believing in ghosts, he calmly searched for the gate. Suddenly, he sensed something behind him and turned to see a tall, dark figure hovering just a few feet away. Frozen by a powerful force that drained his energy, he felt paralyzed and lost all sense of time. After what felt like several minutes, but then, he said he lost all sense of time, so it could have been hours, who knows?
Yeah.
The figure vanished, and he gradually regained control of his senses. Farrant was intrigued by this account because the man was, well, an accountant. He doesn't, if we know anything, it's that accountants are trustworthy.
Very reliable.
They were used to getting reports from people who seemed a bit out there. So when a report came in from a man with a serious... He's got a real job. An accountant is a real job. He works with numbers and money. Therefore, he cannot lie. Yeah. You know? So basically, they just...
If you can't trust him with your finances, what can you trust him with?
Exactly.
And in the following weeks then, so more people were interviewed. But like before, most reports, they turned out to be secondhand or exaggerations of an already established rumour. However... one notable exception was an elderly woman who reported being frightened by a tall, dark man she saw floating near the cemetery gates.
Ooh.
So while walking her dog late at night, she noticed it howling and trying to back away as she saw a figure with glaring eyes staring at her before it vanished within seconds. So the account was... this was also added into the society's filing cabinet.
Yeah.
It must be bursting at the seams
Exactly.
at this point. So to get more accurate information, though, they decided the next step was to visit Highgate Cemetery during the day.
Oh, of course.
Nighttime was just too spooky.
No, listen, we're investigating vampires. We don't want to be scared. What if he actually shows up?
I don't want to get killed. So they wanted to check the reported sites and look for any clues that might explain the sightings. However, when they got there, they didn't find any paranormal evidence. But they also didn't find anything that ruled it out. So, you know, it's a draw.
It could really be anything. Hey, listen, it's Schrodinger's ghost over here. It could
Exactly,
exist, it could not exist. We didn't know what we were looking for, and we didn't find anything.
Exactly. I'm counting this as a win, guys.
So when David Farrant arrived at the cemetery to start the investigation, it's true they didn't find any evidence. However, what did shock him was the increase in vandalism, which seemed to have worsened due to all the rumors circulating. I love it. The kids were like, there's rumors of a vampire, so let's go there more. You know?
Yeah.
So David Farrant said, quote, "Vaults have been broken open and coffins quite literally smashed apart. One vault near the top gate, although not visible from outside it, was wide open and one could see the remains of a skeleton where it had been wrenched from a coffin. Another vault on the main pathway had thus been entered and one of the coffins inside set alight."
Your accent's getting so good, dude.
Thank you. That's why I have Keith on the podcast, folks. He's the only person who compliments my accents. I'm going to keep trying them. I'm going to keep doing them until I get my accents right.
And I'm going to keep loving them.
Thank you. So with no paranormal evidence to guide them, the group decided their next move was to spend a night in the cemetery to see if they could witness the phenomenon firsthand. I'm surprised they had the balls to do this. They were like, I'm too scared. Yeah. It's like, we're trying to find ghosts, but I don't actually want to find a ghost. They picked December 21st, the eve of the winter solstice, time known for its long hours of darkness and supposed heightened psychic activity when the veil between our world and the next was at its thinnest. There are 4 of them throughout the year.
There is, yeah.
December 31st, October 31st, June 21st, and May 31st. Or is it April 31st?
I'm not sure which one it is.
I don't know. It's summer, anyway, it's summer, winter,
I feel it
autumn.
is May.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're...
Whatever is the opposite of October.
Yeah. Don't quote me or put me on podcast round about that.
I'm glad this is being recorded. Around 11 p.m., David went to the cemetery and took up position where the accountant, Thornton, had seen the entity before. However, it wasn't long before David encountered the reported 7-foot-tall spectre. He described the apparition as mostly formless, but with 2 striking red eyes. Although the eyes weren't human, they had a living presence, dull and intense. They were hungry like the wolf. Literally, he says they were like a hungry wolf, while the rest of the figure only had a vague human shape. Just as David realized he was experiencing a psychic attack, the entity disappeared. This was David's first-hand experience with the Highgate vampire. Now we move on to Sean Manchester, and folks, listen, David Farrant, bit of snooze fests. Sean Manchester, this is the action movie.
Yeah.
David Farrant does a documentary. Sean Manchester does, The Conjuring. So now we dive into the sightings that drew Bishop Sean Manchester's attention to the Highgate vampire and the initial investigation that followed. And you might notice a bit of a difference between Sean and David. This one is a bit more theatrical, but you know what?
Slightly.
Pop open a beer, get the popcorn out. Sean Manchester is a British author and self-proclaimed exorcist. I love that I'm a self-proclaimed exorcist.
Yeah, I'm an exorcist. Yeah, great.
I'm also the bishop of the old Catholic Church.
This is the That Chapter podcast / Vampire Hunter Exorcists.
Hell yes. Yeah. Oh yeah, I want to be a vampire hunter. He also claims to be a skilled vampire hunter, which means how many vampires has he hunted?
Right.
You're skilled, he must have hunted quite a few. And of course he holds the title of Bishop of the Old Catholic Church.
Yeah, like Sean, he fully believed in the existence of real vampires. So in his words, and there's a quote, "The true vampire is a dead body reanimated during the blackest hours of night to prey upon the blood of the living. Sharing the dark and terrible qualities of both ghost and demon, the vampire cannot die, but must continue adding new victims to satisfy its need for blood."
Sounds like a vampire, all right.
Yeah, so literally a proper cinematic vampire. It's what you expect. A vampire.
Classic.
Sean's belief in vampires was rooted in his old Catholic church views, where the eternal struggle between good and evil played a central role. To him, believing in vampires meant also believing in God and the devil, with vampires embodying the power of evil. So he saw a direct link between the undead and this world through practices like Satanism and black magic and worshipping the devil. In Sean's view, he was on the front line of this battle.
He was a hero, you might say.
He was doing God's work.
I'm sure he would see himself as a hero, for sure.
Oh, he absolutely did. He actually sounds a lot like the witch hunter that we covered before. Do you know Henrik Kramer?
Yeah.
And he wrote the Malleus Maleficarum.
The incel who wrote the...
Yeah. The Hammer of Witches, but this is back in the 15th century. I'm sure he was part of the old church as well.
Yeah. But Henry Kramer was like a guy who got embarrassed by a woman. He was like, all women must die. I mean, all witches must die, basically.
He's just got a small thing like, kill her!
Yeah. Well, at least Sean wasn't that bad.
No.
But he did want to kill vampires.
But I feel if Sean was around the 15th century,
yeah,
you never, like...
He would have had a go at it. Yeah. Probably not necessarily true, like, hatred of women or anything. Probably because he just wanted to kill something.
Yeah.
So similar to David Farrant, Sean Manchester first heard about the Highgate vampire through reports sent to the British Occult Society, where he was the president. Remember, this is the rival. This is like the Boston Red Sox, New York Yankees of occult society. They hated each other. So the first notable account came in 1967, when two of the most reliable sources we have in today's society, which are, of course, teenage girls, they came forward. See, 16-year-old Barbara and 16-year-old Elizabeth were walking home at night after visiting friends in Highgate Village. Their route took them down Swains Lane, which goes right through and right past Highgate Cemetery. And that's where they claimed to see dead bodies rising from their graves.
That's so good.
Yeah, it's awesome. That's so cool. It's like, this is Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
You know? The second incident happened only a few weeks later. A man and his girlfriend were walking home past Highgate Cemetery when she suddenly screamed. Just behind the iron railings, a figure with a look of terror on its face appeared, only to dissolve into the shadows moments later.
Ooh.
So it's already a bit more dramatic than David Farrant's story, but not gonna lie, it's better. I'm more intrigued in this story.
I mean, the body's coming out of the grave. I'm locked in.
Yeah,
I'm locked in, Sean. You got me.
And sinker. So these accounts in 1967, it's how Sean Manchester first became aware of the Highgate vampire, but it wouldn't be until 1969 when his investigation properly kicked off, when he had a chance meeting with an Elizabeth Wajdila, one of the girls who had witnessed bodies rising from the graves in Highgate Cemetery. Manchester said there was a, quote, disturbing quality about Elizabeth. Her features had grown cadaverous, and her skin was deathly pale. Elizabeth told Sean that, while living with her boyfriend in Highgate, the nightmares had returned with a vengeance, like she has been infected by the vampire. One night, she recounted, "At midnight, as I was drifting off, I felt a chilling presence approach. Though I sensed danger, I couldn't move or wake up. I was drenched in sweat and paralyzed with fear. Something was outside my window, and as it neared my bed, its form grew larger. It looked like a man with an animal's face, gaunt and grey with glaring eyes and sharp teeth. I felt a cold touch and a dizzying, falling sensation before losing consciousness."
Kind of sounds like sleep paralysis.
It sounds like your kind of experience. You would make a great witness for the Highgate vampire.
This whole time, I thought it was sleep paralysis when in fact, it was a vampire.
Yeah.
Oh, and that would explain the blood.
There you go. This is all coming together.
He must have sneezed in my batch on the way out.
So Sean Manchester, he was troubled by Elizabeth's story. So they agreed to discuss it further at her flat the following evening. During his visit, both Elizabeth and her boyfriend shared more details about strange experiences in the apartment, including waking up in the middle of the night with an overwhelming urge to walk to Highgate Cemetery. Just as Manchester was about to leave, Elizabeth's boyfriend suddenly recalled something that might be significant. She had what appeared to be bite marks on her neck.
Oh, Jesus.
Unfortunately, Manchester was already out the door, so he didn't get a chance to check him out. He's like, sorry, I'm outside already. Okay, see you, bye.
Look, he's a busy guy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
He has stuff to do.
Oh yeah, my girlfriend, she has literal vampire marks. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'll check it next time. That's how seriously Sean. I love Sean. He's great. After a few weeks, Elizabeth's boyfriend called Sean Manchester again to tell him her condition had worsened. She wasn't eating, could barely walk, and although the doctor had only prescribed some multivitamins, which is like, what a doctor he was. Take some vitamin C and you'll be fine. Her boyfriend felt like something more sinister had taken over her, almost as if she was possessed.
Ooh.
Looked like a job for a bishop. This time, when Sean visited them at their flat, he took a look at the bite marks on Elizabeth's neck, and he noted that, quote, they were 2 inflamed mounds on the skin, the center of each bearing a tiny hole. At this point, Manchester believed he knew what he was dealing with. He had seen this shit before, but he needed to do a little more research, just to be,
Yeah.
you know, you gotta be certain. You know, obviously we weren't there for when this happened, but it probably went a little something like this.
Where are you going?
There are some things that I must see to.
What things?
Questions that need answering.
But you've only just arrived. I don't understand.
Neither do I. Keep it secret. Keep it safe.
Okay, cool, Gandalf. I mean, Sean.
I'll check all the other shit later.
So a few days later, Manchester, he returned to the flat, and the boyfriend, he filled him in on what had been happening. Once again, Elizabeth had bolted from her flat in the middle of the night, heading towards Highgate Cemetery. And he'd also found spots of blood on her pillowcase. By now, Manchester, he was pretty sure that they were dealing with a vampire.
Sounds like a vampire to me. Classic case.
Just ticking off the boxes. Yep.
Yeah.
But instead of outright saying it, he pulled the old classic move of, do your own research, buddy. And he handed the boyfriend a book from the 1700s called Dissertatio de Vampires Servin Sibius by Professor Zoppius. I butchered that, but it's an old book.
Do your own research, sheep. You know? Get on my level.
Now, the book is best known for containing this famous declaration. The vampires, which issue forth from their graves at night, rush upon people sleeping in their beds, suck their blood and destroy them. They attack men, women and children, sparing neither age nor sex. People attacked by them complain of suffocation and a great interception of spirits, after which they soon die. Those who are killed by them after death become vampires.
Ooh, okay. So after some light reading, both Manchester and the boyfriend were now convinced.
You get him a quiz as well.
Yeah, really? He's like, and what do they turn into? Come on.
Vampires!
Well, Sean's seen this shit before. Classic case. Vampire 101. Elizabeth's turning into one of them. Over the next several nights, Manchester and the boyfriend performed a series of rituals to rid Elizabeth of the vampire haunting her, hoping to stop her from turning into a bloodsucker of the night. Her bedroom was sealed with garlic and crucifixes, with salt sprinkled around the room. Gospel verses were tucked under her pillow. I love that, just like right in his, like a tooth fairy. And the holy water was tossed about while they recited prayers. The usual, the classics. The classics.
Yeah.
And they thought throughout all of this, interestingly enough, they decided to not tell Elizabeth what they were doing or the fact that they believed she was like infected with vampirism at this point. They didn't want her to freak out.
Yeah.
Maybe that would speed up her, turn into a vampire. So we'll just like throw holy water on her, put gospels under her pillow, sprinkle her with salt, and just be like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, don't worry about it.
Just hanging up garlic.
Yeah.
What are you doing there? Huh? Nothing.
Just chilling. What are you doing? In the end, though, it seemed to work, and Elizabeth did return to normal. Also, apparently, the boyfriend and Manchester, they still keep in touch today. So
that's nice.
However, one question still haunted Sean. Who else might be victim to the same devilish entity which had preyed upon Elizabeth?
Always think of others.
By 1970, both David Parent and Sean Manchester were now aware of a supernatural or vampiric entity in the Highgate area, each having had their own first-hand experiences. Very different first-hand experiences, but experiences nonetheless. So David Farrant, the kind of normal one, he boring. I'd say boring though. Okay. Come on,
I like David. I think he's good.
Yeah, but he's
I've seen a couple of interviews. He seems like a...
If you're going to do vampire shit, go whole hog. That's what I say.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
He presented his findings at the next British Psychic and Occult Society meeting, and they decided to start with an observation and reporting approach. Boring. Setting up continuous nightly vigils at the cemetery. 2 society members at a time would be stationed at the 2 spots where the apparition had previously been seen. To stay informed about new sightings, the British Psychic and Occult Society decided to send a non-alarmist letter to the local newspaper, inviting readers to report any genuine experiences.
I love that. So, like, we've got good news, we've got bad news. The good news is we're on it, okay? The bad news is fucking vampires everywhere.
But we're doing it in a non-alarmist way. So, they just wanted to interview subscribers directly, and this was just the beginning of the media attention the story would attract. David Farrand and his team also uncovered what they believed to be evidence of satanic masses. Ooh, shit. Taking place in Highgate Cemetery. They found that one particular tomb had been converted into a small temple, complete with an inverted pentagram and magical symbols inscribed on the floor and walls, suggesting it was used regularly. More concerning was that the complexity of the magical symbols indicated these ain't your looky-loo, amateur Satanists, but rather professional Satanists. They do this shit full time. They know it. They know whether they do this for a living.
Like, look, I really, really just want to wreak havoc and worship Satan. I just can't commit full time to it right now. I have another job, have a family, but, I can do part time, happily.
No, only the real shit. No looky-loos in here. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together for David and his team. They were cracking the case. The satanic activity appeared to have awakened an evil entity with vampiric qualities. Perhaps it was your one. What's her face? Red hair, buried. She was vampire. I don't know.
Lizzie.
Yeah, Lizzie. So Sean, though, he took a very different approach. Not to be outdone, Sean felt compelled to alert the public that the situation involved more than just a harmless apparition. It was a real and potentially deadly vampire feeding on the blood of the living. In fact, Sean Manchester described it as King Vampire. He took his findings to the newspaper, and on Friday, February 27th, 1970, the Hampstead and Highgate Express featured the headline, "Does a vampire walk in Highgate?" Within the article, Sean is quoted saying, "We would like to exorcise the vampire by traditional and approved manner. Drive a stake through its heart with one blow just after dawn, between Friday and Saturday. Chop off the head with a gravedigger's shovel and burn what remains. This is what the clergy did centuries ago, but we'd be breaking the law today." I love this. He's like, fucking snowflakes. Won't let me cut the vampire's head off these days.
Cut us loose, guys.
He's great. I love this. The other group are like, we'll just try and see if anybody's seen anything weird. He's like, we have to cut its fucking head off. Sean rocks. So this obviously caught the attention of the public, and more people started coming forward with their own stories of vampiric sightings, which just fed into the delusion of these reality. That's not, I wasn't there, of these vampire hunters.
Now, not everyone was thrilled with the amount of press that this was getting. So apparently, according to David Farrand, the satanic group that were using Highgate Cemetery hadn't taken kindly to the Society's investigation, which had exposed their activities to the public view. They wrote them a letter, written in blood.
In blood?
In blood. So the letter said, "By your interference with the work of our high order, you have invoked the wrath of Lord Hadith. By his element and the power of the sevenfold cross, you shall now be destroyed. This is decreed by his grace, and this wish will be fulfilled through our order. Be it thus so."
I love they got that and we're like, got that letter. I'm like, Sean, can we look at your finger? Just like a big stab wound with his finger. No. John Manchester didn't hear from any Satanists, but he was contacted by the sister of a 22-year-old woman named Lucia, who had begun exhibiting strange behavior, including sleepwalking, much like the classic case of Elizabeth, another infected vampiric victim we got over here. So Manchester advised the sister to call him the next time Lucia sleepwalked. Not long after, he received the call and hurried over to the woman's flat. Together, himself and the sister followed Lucia as she wandered to Highgate Cemetery. In a trance-like state, Lucia made her way to the columbarium, a structure designed to house cremated remains. For several minutes, Lucia stood staring at the entrance of the columbarium. Suddenly, a low, booming vibration echoed from the catacombs. Thinking quickly, Manchester threw a silver cross between Lucia and the columbarium's entrance, which snapped her out of the trance. Sean had found it. The lair of the vampire. The media was having a field day with this story, as they should.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
On March 6th, 1970, the Hampstead and Highgate Express published an article called "Why Do the Foxes Die?" In the article, it described how David Farrant had found dead foxes in Highgate Cemetery. The leading theory, of course, was that this was linked to the ghost in the area, and the ghost which may or may not be a vampire. This wasn't the first time the dead foxes had come up either. Sean Manchester had previously mentioned this to the very same newspaper back a month earlier. However, Manchester claimed that autopsies had been done on these foxes, and they'd been drained of blood with fang marks on the necks.
Doing these autopsies.
He was autopsying dead foxes. It's like, I have done scientific evidence and found bite marks on their necks. It's like, what? It seemed that David Farrant and Sean Manchester were aligning, though, on the vampire theory. And so, in March, Friday the 13th of March, no less, 1970, both were interviewed on television to discuss their findings. Now, David, he tried to avoid, you know yourself, tried to avoid using the word vampire, didn't want to cause any sensationalist outbreaks or anything like that.
Yeah.
Sean, as usual, took a very different route. He boldly claimed the phenomenon was a king vampire, and after producing a crucifix and homemade wooden stakes, he announced that to destroy the vampire, one must drive a stake through its heart with one blow, chop its head off with a gravedigger's shovel, and then burn what remains. Well, David wouldn't even say the word vampire.
I know.
Very, very funny.
Yeah, Dave's a real so dude. He had me while he shot. Kill it! Kill it!
It was also announced that a vampire hunt would be taking place that very evening. Come along, bring the kids.
Right.
We're having a big get together in Highgate Cemetery.
I say as soon as they said, I'm like, get this out now.
Oh, yeah, where's the bus?
Yeah.
So obviously the idea of a real vampire hunt happening in a cemetery on Friday the 13th of all days, it sent people into a frenzy. Within hours of that broadcast, nearly 200 people showed up at Highgate Cemetery, climbing over the walls and locked gates, kicking them down, eager to witness or join in on the hunt, which I think we would both be there.
Oh, 100%. I'd absolutely be there.
I would be strutting in with a 6-pack of beer, a steak, and a big old crucifix around my neck. I'd be having a good time.
A bit of garlic as well.
Oh, yeah.
This is like my favorite part of the whole story. But one of the people actually showed up was a school teacher from Essex. Get this. His name was Alan Blood.
Ooh.
That was his real name.
What a name.
He was in the newspaper and all. But he travelled 40 miles to London after watching the programme, bringing several of his students to join the vampire hunt.
He was into it.
It's a learning experience, I guess. Yeah. Honestly, though, I think Alan Blood, like, he's the vampire.
Yeah,
he had to
clearly.
Be.
So things were spiraling out of control, with people arriving by the busload, armed with their own makeshift weapon and, of course, maybe a few points of ale from the local. The police were called in to shut it down, but that, of course, did not stop Sean Manchester. Leading a group of about 100 people, oh my god, Sean knew exactly where to go. They made their way to the columbarium, of course, the vampire's lair, where Lucia had previously led him to. Unfortunately, this time though, it was sealed by a heavy iron gate.
Rats.
Fortunately, Manchester knew of a hole in the roof just big enough for one person to slip through, and so in a scene right out of Mission Impossible, Sean Manchester was lowered into the columbarium, where he found 3 empty coffins.
Okay.
With no vampires to stake, oh no, shucks, he lined the coffins with garlic and crosses, formed a ring of salt around them, and climbed back out. Eventually, the police managed to disperse the crowds and restore order. Once again, the media had a field day, and the next day, across the front page of the London Evening News, it read, "Satan Riddle of Open Tomb." After that, things settled down a bit. But not for long. On August 7th, 1970, the Hampstead and Highgate Express reported the body of a woman was dragged from a vault in Highgate Cemetery, staked through the heart, decapitated, and left lying in the middle of the main pathway. The desecrated corpse was unfortunately discovered by 2 15-year-old schoolgirls, And now this was a very real crime that did happen, and Sean Manchester knew that something had to be done. The vampire.
Enough is enough.
Struck again. Sean Manchester, the only man who can solve this problem.
I've had it up the hair with that vampire.
Sean convinced poor Lucia to return to the columbarium. The woman he believed infected by the vampire. He was like, come on back. Go back to where the vampire's lair should be. Upon arrival, her voice deepened, and she repeatedly chanted, "You should never have come here," while laughing and asking, "Where are you?" She then approached a nearby vault, the same one where a headless corpse had been found, and Lucia collapsed, believing he had found the new resting place of the vampire. Sean and his team entered the vault. They discovered a well-preserved coffin without a nameplate, revealing a body that seemed neither dead nor alive. One assistant suggested it was newly dead, despite the vault's apparent old age. Sean readied an aspen stake, but an assistant pleaded against it, calling it sacrilege. Sean argued it was an act of healing, but the team decided to wait for proper permission, though Sean feared it would be too late by then. "Is there no other way?" asked an assistant. "We can try," Sean replied. I love this, by the way. Who are they asking for permission from to stake the corpse?
Yeah.
The head of the grave, like Mr. Graveyard, like the owner of the body, the family?
King Bishop.
There you go. He'll ask himself.
In the book, it actually reads, so he says, "Is there no other way?" Sean goes, "This is written in the book. We can try. We can try."
Yeah, very dramatically.
It's so dramatic. And like, as I said, like, this is all from Sean's book. And I suspect that he added the part about not staking the vampire to avoid accusations of desecrating a corpse. When, like, you know, like in reality, I reckon Sean would have staked the vampire corpse at the first opportunity.
Yeah,
but you can't, like, he couldn't in his book write, "Oh yeah, we broke into a mausoleum and then I rammed a stake through a corpse."
Yeah, exactly. Hope it wasn't your grandma.
Yeah.
All right, you know.
Yeah.
So in the end, they simply closed the coffin, covered it with crosses, garlic, and holy water. They then performed an exorcism on Lucia by placing her in a ring of salt, chanting prayers, and sprinkling her with holy water. After the exorcism, they bricked up and permanently sealed the tomb, mixing garlic into the cement, which should be noted for extra precaution. They did their research. And so, if you visit Highgate Cemetery today, you can still see the sealed tomb.
David Farrant, now, his final encounter with the Highgate vampire was less dramatic, but it had very real-life consequences. So to prevent further harm, David, he organised a psychic seance to summon. He was on the same page as Sean as well. He was like, "Listen, we can't have it anymore. Like, someone's after desecrating a corpse. I'm not having it."
Yeah, I've had it up to here, as you said.
Yeah, exactly. So the psychic seance that he organised was he wanted to communicate with it and, if necessary, banish the entity. But it was always going to be necessary. Scheduled for midnight on August 17th, under a full moon, the seance involved creating a protective circle on the ground with sacred symbols, consecrated water, and salt.
Classic.
I mean, you gotta add salt to everything.
Yeah.
It's just delicious. So the ritual was underway when a distant torchlight and muffled voices signaled the approaching police. Given the negative press about satanic activities at Highgate Cemetery, David knew how this looked. So he quickly gathered up his psychic tools and he fled. Now, despite the escape plan that I had previously talked about, David, he was unfortunately caught and arrested.
Oh boy.
So the case...
How am I going to explain this one?
All right. So the case, it went before Magistrate Christopher Lee at Clerkenwell's Magistrate Court 2 weeks later, but it was adjourned due to Detective Sergeant Neville Brown's mild heart attack.
Oh, the vampire.
I know, right?
Strikes again.
Was it vampire or was it the occult?
Ooh, you never know. You never know.
But it was just rescheduled on September 29th.
Damn.
Foiled again. So the prosecution argued that David had been found leaving the cemetery with a cross and a wooden stake, intending to find and destroy the vampire. They claimed this meant opening coffins to locate it. The defense countered that the stake, it was just a piece of wood used to measure out the magical circle. So the case was ultimately dismissed, and Magistrate DJ Purcell, he accepted the defense's argument and noted that David's actions were akin to the pursuit of the Loch Ness Monster, an eccentric quest, rather than criminal activity. He also stated that there was no intention to damage coffins, and that the cemetery was not legally considered an enclosed area.
Indeed. So with this, the case of the Highgate vampire was closed. For now. However, the rivalry between David Farrant and our boy Sean Manchester, official That Chapter podcast position is we are Sean Manchester stands.
Okay.
It was just beginning, with both of them taking jabs at each other in the media and later in online forums. In 1973, flyers began appearing in several North London underground stations, advertising a psychic duel between David Farrant and Sean Manchester. On Friday, April 13th, no less, David and Sean were literally going to fight, with rumours suggesting swords might be involved. However, the whole thing was cancelled when the police had to step in, which is pretty funny because, it's just two nerds on guard.
As if they had, there was like no crime in London,
Yeah. As mentioned, the rivalry between the pair continued right up until David Farrant's death in 2019, perhaps at the hands of the... And thus ends the tale of the vampire hunters of Highgate Cemetery. What a story. That's a good one.
I love it.
I think that's such a fun story.
It's so good. I wish I had been there.
Yeah, I know. Oh, man. Okay, I don't know when I'm going to be in London next, but next time I'm over there, I've got to go and see.
I'm definitely going to go to Highgate,
yeah,
and have a look for the tomb that's boarded up with the
garlic in the
garlic cement.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right, here, folks, thank you so much for listening to this whole episode of the That Chapter podcast. I hope we put you in the sufficiently spooky mood now that we are officially in autumn, fall, this part of the year, leaves fall, and it's autumnus. Whatever. You know the drill. So here, listen, I said it again.
Yeah. Okay, listen to
Listen
me.
Myself.
Listen to me.
Shaking the microphone. Listen to me. All right, folks. Thanks so much for listening. The next episode of the podcast will be up when it's up. You know the drill at this stage. An episode of the podcast is up every single Monday morning. Please rate and review the podcast wherever you listen. It helps us out so much. And yeah, Keith, any final words?
I can't wait to get into more of these stories. It's going to be great. These are lots of fun. And I'm definitely on the vampire buzz, so I'll see if I can dig out some more.
Excellent. Sounds like a plan. All right. Thanks so much for listening, guys.
And I'll see you.
All right. Bye.
To prey upon the... Sorry. Blah, 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 blah.
Satan, get you behind me and be gone from this place forever.